All right, boys and girls, uh, trying things a completely different way. Oh, and now the camera battery's dying. Of course, of course. This is a night of issues. It's a nightmare. All right, well, at least I have a quick solution for this. I'll pop in a new camera battery here. So, oh dear. All right, well, hopefully this won't take very long to fix. Pop in a new battery. Everything will be happy, happy, happy. Okay, just charged this battery, so hopefully it'll last a little while. Okay. Go away. I know. You're sharing. Good for you. Oh, right. Okay. All right, that should more or less work, and then it should go full screen here in a second. There we go. Oh, boy. All right. Put this away. Try not to mix it with good batteries. Tell you what. Which battery is this? I'm going to throw this on the recharger real quick. I'll be right back. Basically, I've abandoned the streaming software I was using. It came with this new capture card I've got for capturing the HDMI feed, but it doesn't work worth a darn. So instead, I've gone back to the old way of doing Google Hangouts, and now I'm just sharing the capture software screen because it seems to work well when it's not trying to stream to YouTube. Everything's fine, everything's happy. But the minute you try to stream to YouTube, it just goes south. And I can't tell if it's actually going south in the stream or not. So I've abandoned the original method of doing this, and I'm doing it the wrong way now. But this seems to be working better. Hooray! So there we go. Okay, I got that battery recharging. Let's see if I can't fix. Wrong way. So the scope is not exactly perfectly polar aligned. In fact, it's not really polar aligned hardly at all. I totally eyeballed it. I have no stars to work with tonight whatsoever. So the alignment is a bit shoddy. Actually, it's really shoddy. It's just sort of like north is generally that way, so that's the way the mount's going to point. But that's not accurate enough to smoothly track the moon over long periods of time. So I'm going to have to fiddle with it a bit here and there, but it's working well enough. All right. So, in theory, I should have a much easier time now accessing my own YouTube page while the stream is running. Verify. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. I know I made it not full. It'll automatically go back to full here in a second. Okay, mute that. So, it should be working now. Cool. Cool. All good. People are already commenting on the failed streams. Of course, the footage looks great, doesn't it? But I just need to get it to... Okay. So what? Can I minimize that? Can I minimize this? There's probably some way to do it. I don't know. Yeah. Well, maybe if I just go back to this window long enough, it'll... There we go. All right, that's better. I have to be a little careful about what window I'm tabbing to, because otherwise it takes it off full screen. But it works. It works stably now. Hooray. I think it's finally stable. Yeah, it seems to be working. The frame rate's not as smooth, but stability, I'll take stability over frame rate any day. Glad everyone's enjoying it. So, the deal with the Supermoon thing is, I think, let's see, according to my phone, I haven't checked it with my own spreadsheet yet, but it should be accurate. According to my phone, full moon occurs at 8:52 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow morning. Now, that basically means that if you're observing the moon at 8:52 p.m. tonight, you're as close to the full moon as you would be at 8:52 p.m. tomorrow night, because the moment of full moon is actually in the morning hours. So it doesn't really matter. I know that a lot of sites are saying full moon or super moon is tomorrow night, but really it's technically tomorrow morning. So it's as good tonight as it would be tomorrow night. It doesn't really matter in terms of the moon itself. It does matter in terms of the weather for me, and as you can see, it's cloudy, but just doing the best we can here. I've got the camera set to an automatic mode, so it should try to keep the exposure reasonable. Wanted to see when perigee technically occurs, so I'm going to look that up real quick. Should have looked it up before now, but I've been a little bit busy today. So, 13. Geocentric. We just want observer range and rate rate. Okay. Relative to the center of Earth, the moon is at its closest. Looks like around, it's kind of what I thought off the top of my head, 11:28 Universal Time tomorrow. That should be 7:28 a.m., I think. So about 8 hours from now, just under 8 hours from now, is when it will be at its closest to Earth. So really, at this point, we're actually looking at a moon that is closer, slightly closer to us, than it would be if I were observing it early in the evening tomorrow night. And as we get later into the evening, then, you know, we're on the approach. We're only getting closer. Anyway, the nice thing about this setup is that it does allow me to show you guys the whole moon all at once. Normally, it's not really doable for me, because the moon is quite large and the telescope's focal length is quite long. So normally with my Samsung camera, we're only able to see a part of the moon at once. But with a focal reducer and the Canon T5i, I'm able to just barely fit in the entire moon. It gives us a nice view of the whole moon. Well, except for the clouds. So I apologize for all the false starts there on trying to get this working. Oops, oops, oops. Oh dear. If I accidentally move my mouse outside of the window, it really goofs up like it just did. Let's see if I can get it to go. There we go. Goes back. I'm going to maximize the screen so I don't accidentally keep doing that. What's the best time to see it at its closest on the west coast? Well, I would say actually tonight into early tomorrow morning would be your best time. That's when it's going to be at its closest. So 7:28 is Eastern time when it's closest to Earth tonight. And actually, in California, that would be, I think, 4:28 a.m. Is when the moon is going to be at its closest point to Earth. And that's when it'll be at its largest. I'm obviously not going to stay up that long to do this. Besides, I wouldn't have enough battery power for the camera. But the difference between now and then is negligible at this point. I don't know. Much as I hate the clouds, it does at least add some character to the stream. I'm not actually a huge fan of the full moon. It's blindingly bright, washes out any hope of seeing dim deep space objects. And, there's not a whole lot of shadow visible on the moon. I like having a nice visible terminator cutting through the moon and showing you all the nice craters. But when it's full like this, the craters are kind of washed out. And I don't know. Just makes the moon look a little flatter, a little less interesting. So at least we have some fast-moving clouds going over it to make it look interesting, I guess. But it doesn't look like it's going to clear up. In fact, it'll probably get worse. So do the best we can. But I did want to give you guys this stream. I did talk about doing this, so. Somebody asked if it was safe to stare at the moon. It is safe. It will not hurt your eyes, even with a pretty powerful telescope. Back when I was in college, we used to look at it all the time through a 24-inch Schmidt Cassegrain. And I will admit, it was so blindingly bright on some nights that looking through the eyepiece, it was almost painful to look at. But it's not dangerous. The sun is dangerous. Don't look at the sun, especially through a telescope. Unless you really know what you're doing, you're using proper, safe solar filters. So on that note, I have a Coronado PST now. It's a hydrogen alpha scope, so I'm hoping to do some solar observing and streaming in the near future with that. Oh, I like that comparison. So Space Imaging Keith said tonight's supermoon is super versus October's full moon only if you think that 16.05-inch pizzas are super relative to 16-inch pizzas. Actually, I can kind of imagine a pizza shop which sells their supersized pizzas as being only 0.05 inches larger and upcharging you, $1 for it. I can see that. It seems legit. Am I using a moon filter? No, this is completely unfiltered. Canon T5i and a 0.65 focal reducer, 0.63, something like that. Focal reducer on the Meade 8-inch LX200. Yes, this is real. Oh, that was a Neil deGrasse Tyson quote. Okay, I can totally see that. That's cool. I like that comparison. Yeah, it's a bit of a media non-story. I mean, the media's made this story what it is because they have to have something to talk about, and it sounds really cool talking about statistics of the closest full moon since 1948 or whatever it was. It sounds impressive, but when you realize just how little difference it actually makes, how close it is all the time, perigee moons are not that uncommon. This is not that much better than that, than those other perigee moons. By comparison, Mars goes through cycles where it shows a good apparition on average about every 2 years. You'll have an apparition of Mars where Mars will be at opposition to Earth. So I think a little more, a little less than 2 years, but that's the ballpark. But from apparition to apparition, they can vary quite dramatically in terms of how good they are, how big Mars is in the sky. And it's never large enough to see any detail by eye, but in a telescope you can tell the difference. So the famous 2003 apparition of Mars, which was like the closest of our lifetimes, right? It was really good, and it's noticeably better than apparitions that have happened since then. But I think it's like every 13 or 15 years, there's like another cycle where occasionally, once in a while, you'll get a really good apparition of Mars where the perihelion point of Mars lines up pretty well with the aphelion point of Earth. And so they're kind of at their closest of their closest. And that happens, somewhat frequently, but it's still rare enough that you want to capitalize on it when it happens. And so I can't remember if it's every 13 or 15 years, something like that. And these are all very ballpark figures. I'm just going off the top of my head here. But point is, the 2003 apparition was kind of special, but only in the sense that another apparition of that quality won't happen for another 13 to 15 years or so. And you think about it, that is a fairly long time to wait for another good approach. And of course, the next one won't be quite as close as it was in 2003. But again, that difference between those really close approaches of Mars, not all that much. But again, media feeding frenzy on that, and it turned into a real nightmare because every single year, the same emails would start floating around saying Mars would be as big as the moon in the sky, which is an exaggeration, complete exaggeration. The truth of that was that Mars in a telescope at a certain magnification would be as large as the full moon in the sky is to your naked eye. Okay, it's like very different, a very different comparison, and kind of arbitrary if you think about it, because it's a question of how much magnification you're putting on the telescope to make it look that large. But it was really good in 2003. Unfortunately, that email kept going around every single year around August, and we would get people showing up to the observatory expecting to see Mars. We'd have to tell them, I'm sorry, that email you got was a hoax. Mars isn't even visible right now, so we can't even show you Mars, let alone it's the full moon. So that led to a lot of long faces, I'm afraid, and it took a while for that, but email hoaxes finally died down. I haven't seen it the last couple years. Maybe I just overlooked it, but it seems like that hoax has fortunately died down. Either that or people caught on. Oh, okay. Derek says he still gets that email every few years. Yeah, it's probably still floating around in cyberspace, but I think people are starting to catch on to it. They probably received it 2 or 3 times now, so they realize that it can't be true the second and third time because it doesn't seem like as many people show up begging to see Mars in August as they used to, at least in my experience. But I no longer work at an observatory. I'm an amateur astronomer now. I do this um, just out of my own enjoyment. But when I was in college, I had a job working at a local observatory. It was a public observatory that people would come to look through and see telescopes and stuff, not a research observatory. And of course, I also volunteered at the main observatory on campus, which was technically research grade, but there was no real research being done there. I see someone in the chat is updating George Carlin's words you can't say with the word Nibiru. Just as a PSA, please don't use foul language on my channel. Try to keep it PG around here. I don't mind so much when it's in the chat because the chat is not permanently recorded. It goes away as soon as the stream is done. But especially in the comment section, please use PG rated language. Otherwise, I'll have to remove you. So I'll have to do a post-mortem later on the false starts I had initially trying to get the stream running with the other software I was using. Because I don't know what point it failed, or if it was a progressive failure, or was it just working the whole time and I couldn't tell? I don't know. I know at some point it did seem to stop streaming initially, but that might have been because I was all tapping out. On that last attempt, I kept it on the window, and it seemed to start failing anyway. Oh boy, this might be it, folks. I don't know, we got a few more gaps, but it seems like it's getting thicker. Might be coming into the end of a very short webcast here. I apologize, but the weather just doesn't want to play nice, and unfortunately it's only going to get worse from here, I think. Everything's black because of clouds. Yeah. It's a cloudy night. It was looking good earlier in the evening. It was looking really nice today, but the clouds just wanted to move in and take over for the supermoon. Oh, I think I ran out of space on the memory card. I'm going to have to figure out a better way to do this. All right. Oh, yes, I've cited Jupiter's moon Io many times. In fact, a couple years ago, I did a time-lapse of Jupiter with Io crossing in front of it. And Jupiter was at its closest approach to Earth that night, or around that night. And I was able to actually resolve Io as more than just a point-like dot of light. It was actually a extended disk. I mean, it was tiny, but you could see the disk of Io, actually, which surprised me. I didn't know if I'd really be able to get that kind of resolution out of the scope, but I did. So, yeah, not citing I/O or anything else tonight, though. I think this might, well, we might be getting a gap over there near the horizon, but okay, there's a gap. It's hard to tell where the gaps are going to pop up. It might break up a little bit here for a little while, but it's not the best night for this, unfortunately. How many satellites should one suspect across the moon while watching any given night? That's a good question. I'd have to. My default reaction is to try to do the math, which I can't do in my head right now. But if I'm thinking about it in terms of like doing deep space imaging on any given night. If I'm imaging an object, I'll pick up 2 or 3 satellites through a single field of view in just a couple hours' time, and that's through an area of the sky that's actually less than what you're seeing right now. Oh, the guys you're talking about space imaging, Keith. You're talking about the guys who claim that satellites aren't real because you should see a ton of them. That thing. Well, the funny thing is, the sky's really big. There's a lot of sky up there. The moon's actually really kind of small compared to the rest of the sky. It's only half a degree wide, and so yes, at any given time, there are plenty of satellites above your head. If it weren't so cloudy tonight, I could point at a variety of them, a large variety of them, and directly image them. The geostationary satellites, unless it's eclipse season, they're pretty much always visible throughout the night. And I can point out the direct TV satellites. I can point out, the Sirius, type satellites, all those communication satellites. And you'll see tons of them, just dot after dot along the geostationary belt. And then as you approach twilight hours, you can see low Earth orbit satellites as well. And at any given time, there's a bunch of them up there when it's twilight hours. And, a scope like this, I can directly track them and show them, and I can show one after the other. But it's never enough for those people who say that you should be able to see tons of satellites. Well, I can show you tons of satellites, but, no matter how many I provide, it's never enough. They just keep moving the goalposts back further and further. CubeSats, I've tracked them before. They are trickier. They're going to be fainter. It's not something you can really see by eye unless they have some sort of flare going on. But, and they will tend to experience brightness variations depending on the angle of the sunlight on the CubeSat. Some CubeSats have, kind of shiny solar arrays or antenna on them. And if you get a nice reflection off of it, it'll show up real nice in a telescope. But even when it's not, with my S-Big camera, and if I'm doing long exposures on them, I can pick them up. Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I'm hoping to pick up work on that soon. I've got some other projects I've been working on for work and stuff. That should slow down a bit. I've been working a lot of weekends lately, and putting in overtime hours, but that should slow down by the end of this month. And especially around Thanksgiving and stuff, I'm hoping to put in some effort on it. Unfortunately, I am taking a trip out of state on Thanksgiving, and so I won't be able to have the scope with me. So webcasting will be straight out. of the question. And of course, I won't be able to bug test the software against the actual telescope at that time, but I can at least do some other work on it. So we'll see how that goes. Oh yeah, no, I'll definitely be posting a video when I'm ready for it to be tested on other people's hardware. I'm hoping. Let me think here. One of the big challenges I need to take care of is at some point in the very near future, I need to do some more hardcore testing, just hardcore testing of the satellite tracking functionality on it, and make sure it's as solid as it can be. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to be taking it to my alma mater and seeing if I can get them to let me use their telescopes for beta testing, because they've got some newer AutoStar telescopes, and we'll see how that goes. Based on how that goes, I'm either going to have to come up with some creative solutions, or hopefully the process will be straightforward. It's never straightforward. I should stop saying that and jinxing myself. It's never straightforward, but maybe it will be. We'll see how well the porting process goes. If the port works out pretty well, if the port to AutoStar works out pretty well, then I think I can pretty quickly get to the point where it's ready for testing on other people's hardware. Because I think the process of porting to Celestron Nexstar should be pretty simple as well. I've taken a look at some of the documentation on the command set for Nexstar. It's pretty similar, actually. Does it incorporate known satellite orbits, or is it strictly optical? Oh, I see what you're saying. It does sort of incorporate known satellite orbits. Right now, the way the software works, it's actually pretty simplistic, in that it reads a coordinate list that is basically an ephemeris file, which is generated by a program which takes the orbit and calculates where the satellite's going to be over multiple points of time. And so basically what it'll do is it'll take that list of coordinates and it will look at the current time on the computer clock, and it will interpolate the instantaneous coordinates. So, let's say the coordinate list is spaced 1 second apart. You need to know where it's actually going to be between 1 second to the next, obviously. So it'll do a very quick interpolation of the coordinates based on the time and where the computer clock is, and calculate an instantaneous position, feed that into the telescope. So basically, yes, you can track automatically based on known orbits. Effectively, that's what that means. Using a generated ephemeris file. You pre-generate that before you actually start the tracking. It doesn't take very long. It takes 2 seconds, really, once you know how to do it. The program that generates that ephemeris file is pretty quick about it. So you just save that as a text file. You open it up in the tracking program, and you tell it to start tracking when the time is right, and it will start following that path. And then you click on it in the video window, and it will center it for you. So I'm trying to make it more stable right now. It's a little jittery once it's got it centered. So that's mostly just a matter of optimization of the code and things like that. I think I've got it licked, but I need to do more testing on it, and I just haven't had time this month. It's been a crazy 2 months, actually. So I should have more time between now and Christmas, and I don't want to put out any release dates and disappoint people by having to push it back, but unofficially, I'm hoping personally to be able to have it at a point where it's ready to let other people start testing it sometime by the end of the year. That's where I want to be. Yeah, it seems like we're getting fewer and fewer gaps, but what happened to that? Oh, geez. There was a, there was a kind of a gap I was seeing off in the west that was actually moving towards the east and moving towards where the moon was. And it seems like it closed up before it got to the moon. It seems like the clouds just went whoop, closed up, and that's it. Oh, the Lord. Oh, geez. Yeah. Sorry, guys. It's a pretty crummy night, I know. But the other good news about the setup now that I'm testing it, well, the bad news is the frame rate is kind of crap. But the good news is that this allows me to stream from the Canon T5i, which is what I would use if now when I'm shooting the space station and other bright satellites, is I'll plug the T5i onto the telescope and shoot fast frame rate type video with it. If I have to do long exposures, I'll use the S-Big ST2000. Obviously, it's a much better camera for deep space because it's much better at doing long exposures. But if it's short exposures and I need a wide field of view, then I'll use the T5i that I'm using here. So, and actually, I would normally use the Samsung camera for high magnification work if I'm like tracking satellites and stuff. But the thing is, I now use the Samsung camera as the guiding camera to guide the telescope on the satellite with the optical tracking. That's the program I'm writing. So now the T5i serves duty as the camera for recording the images through the main telescope when I'm doing this. So basically, the bottom line is that I'm hoping yeah, I kind of wish I could alter the camera's firmware a little bit. So it would be nice to get magnified video. Like I can magnify the video, but you can't really magnify it while you're recording, as far as I can tell. But I bet there's firmware out there that will fix that. Anyway, kind of thinking out loud here, but point is, I'm hoping in the future to be able to do live streams of the space station with the Canon T5i, the camera I'm using right now, streaming it, and the telescope tracking it using the Samsung. So that's going to be coming up. Again, I'm hoping to get the software into sort of a ready state by the end of the year. I finally got some good shot of the moon here, at least momentarily. It is beautiful, isn't it? Oh, jeez. Oh, Lord. What does that say about my channel? So I had accidentally left one of the one of the other tabs open on one of my failed starts trying to get the stream going here earlier tonight, and it had kept auto playing on its own with that YouTube feature of, you know, randomly picking a video it thinks is related to the current video. And when I clicked over to the tab, it was already starting to play a WSO video. Oh man, I think that's an insult to my channel. Yeah, sorry about the crickets. They're loud. Yeah, Bob Band. It does make things creepy, I guess. Combined with kind of the clouds going in front of the moon. It's like one of those cheesy werewolf movies where the werewolf comes out when the cloud goes away and then it transforms back into the guy when the cloud comes over. Who knows? I'm not showing my face cam right now. Maybe I'm transforming into a werewolf. You guys wouldn't even know, would you? Can't see me. Yeah, well, I think I'm going to wrap up soon here, folks. It's clouds that I see coming now are even thicker than before. It's just going to keep getting worse, unfortunately. I think that was our last good gap. Did another small one here in a second, but it's really a crummy night. And I apologize for that. It was looking better earlier. Here comes a little gap, I think. Assuming it hits the moon. Yep. It's not even all that great. Well, okay, it's okay. But it's going to go away quick. Yep, there it goes. Yeah, so I think that's going to just about do it. If there's any final questions I can answer, I'll try to answer them for you. Is it tonight, night, and tomorrow? Yeah, it kind of is. So basically, the point of closest approach of the moon is at 7:28 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 11:28 Universal Time. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the time change. It's not 7:28 a.m. Eastern Time. It's 6:28 a.m. Eastern Time. Sorry. 6:28 a.m. Eastern Time is when it makes its closest approach to Earth. And so if you were watching the moon early in the evening tonight, earlier, just after sunset, it's about the same distance as it will be tomorrow night just after sunset, roughly. If anything, it's actually going to be a little bit closer right now than it will be tomorrow night. But technically, the full moon is on Monday at like 8:52 Eastern Time, I think. Yeah, full moon, 8:52 a.m. Eastern Time, according to my phone. I'm hoping that the time zone is set right on that, but yeah, it does appear to be. So, moment of full moon is at 8:52 a.m. Eastern. Moment of closest approach to Earth is at 6:28 Eastern Monday. So technically, both those events happen on Monday, but it's like Monday morning, not Monday evening. Therefore, if you're observing early in the evening tonight and early in the evening tomorrow night, you're kind of equidistant from those events in terms of time. So, there you go. All right, well, I'm going to wrap up the stream, so thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing more with you guys in the future. So, clear skies, folks.